right, everyone has a website, but nobody really reads them. What if instead of a website, you could take all that content and you could allow users or your visitors to chat with your website through your own custom chatbot? And what if that chatbot could go a step further and actually be your sales agent and answer questions about your services, gather requirements, and even give out a quote? Well, that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to show you guys how to do in today's video. Okay, so what you're going to learn today is, number one, how to take your documents from any system of choice, Google Drive, Notion, whatever, and ingest all those into a vector database. Number two, documents are living, they change. So we need to handle changes, make sure we delete old entries out of the database and reload in the updated documents. Number three, we're going to build our little AI to do Q&A for users and then also be able to capture leads and put those into our CRM. And of course, number four, yes, we can embed it on our website, but I like to deploy it on my own custom domain. So you can see here, I've actually got chat.jemini-io. I think that's a little more professional and fun. And we're going to do this in three pretty straightforward steps. Well, it was not straightforward to figure out, but you're welcome. Number one, we're going to organize our documentation in a Notion database, because that's what I use for pretty much everything. Documents, CRM, Notion is the boss. Number two, we're going to take an N8N trigger to handle the document changes. So every time something changes in Notion, N8N will handle that and reload it to the vector database. Number three, we're going to build two different N8 AI agents to handle, one to specifically handle questions and one to handle proposal writing. Let's go. I'm sorry I did that. Okay, before we go too much further, I just want to give you guys a quick demo of what I'm going to show you how to build. So over here, we have our N8N. Close the dev tools there. Kind of default chat here. It's pretty simple. There's not a whole lot as far as customization that you can do. We'll get into that later, but it says Agent Gemini. Kind of reminds me of the Matrix, you know. Ask me anything about Gemini, got a project idea. We will give you an approved quote. That's the claim. So if I paste in here, tell me about Gemini, what makes them different? This is going to go look through all those documents that I've loaded, about documents from the website, and try to communicate probably our core values and some things about Gemini. Unique blend of business acumen and engineering excellence, blah, blah, blah. Their approach includes prioritizing traction, nurturing talent, and maintaining a culture filled with compassion and responsibility. Those phrases are straight out of our core values document. If you have a project in mind or looking to explore how Gemini can help your ideas into actionable outcomes, feel free to share more details. So I did tell my AI, like, hey, you're a sales agent, so be prompting the user to share their information, share about what projects they're working on, etc. Now, one of the most important things of a website is contact information. So I took that web page, put it in the vector database that we'll talk about later. And so hopefully it can answer questions like this. It gives you the website. It links them to my LinkedIn. If I click on this, it goes to Dan over here. Well, okay, it goes to Gemini. That's good too. Calendly. It does talk about YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and GitHub. So I can say, what's your YouTube? And it should be able to find that link for me. Sweet, it found our YouTube link. So pretty good there. And then I'm going to paste in a whole bunch of text that you can't see because the N8N default chat thing is not super great. But if I go ahead and push that through, I'm asking for a quote now. I'm saying, hey, I got this machine learning project. I just want it to be a web app. I've given some details. I've given a budget range. I only want to spend $10,000. And let's see what it says. Gemini can assist you with your project. Gemini's build blueprint service would be particularly beneficial for your situation. So this agent knows about my services. I've got my OP accelerator, my build blueprint, SaaS enablement. So it's actually looking at the request and recommending the appropriate Gemini service. Okay, so this is interesting. So in this particular case, the agent is not trying to give a proposal to this user yet. So I think the last 10 times I tried this, it would always start to give a proposal. In this case, it's like, hey, just do the build blueprint service and we'll go from there. I want a proposal now. Let's see what happens. All right, so it knows that it doesn't quite have enough information to give a proposal. So it's asking for more details, the specific business needs or goals you're aiming to achieve with the project. I want to make money. It should be a subscription-based SaaS product. Okay, let's see if it can do that for me. Sometimes I sing a little song for my kids, that waiting patiently song. You know it. Oh, did it die again? I think there's something going on with my render. Let's see if I go into executions. Dang, okay. That just took forever, but it did finally come back. So here's a proposal outline based on the details you provided for your machine learning project in the life sciences industry. It talks about project overview, Gemini solution. It's still recommending the build blueprint workshop. Cost efficiency, approximately cost of $98 per hour, which represents a 30% reduction compared to industry standards. So it's basically saying we're kind of specialized in this particular project because we've done projects like this before. So it's saying that we're going to get it done faster and more efficiently than the competitors out there. It gives relevant experience, which you can ask about. So we did work with Positron. Next steps, we recommend the build blueprint service. To move forward, to provide you with a full detailed proposal, can you provide your name and email address? So this is part of that sales agent prompting, I guess, that we did here to say, look, be asking for their information so you can create a lead in our CRM and send them an email with full details. So it's just giving kind of a summary here, just the tip of the iceberg, as it were. So I'll say, yes, give me a full proposal. I'm Dan at jemini.io. And I just want to show you guys this working in my CRM and email. Going slow today, man. This is why I really like N8N for just quick, get something working, do demos and stuff. But I think if you're going to do this in production, you're going to follow a lot of the same things with N8N, but you're probably going to want to do it with your own custom code. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that. I've sent a full proposal to your email, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so 2 things here. Number 1, there's my email just came through. So here's my email, your full proposal from Gemini. And it's got a little bit more details in here. Honestly, not a whole lot yet. I got some work to do on the prompting, but it does give a recommended team, which it didn't give before. It tries to give a cost breakdown. But the other thing I want to show you is in my Notion, I've got this CRM database that I've set up, and it's pushing all these new leads here. So I've done this a few times, so I'm not sure which one this is, but one of these is coming in is ML web app development, ML web app client. I feel like it might have been this one actually. But you can see here that it's capturing this lead information. It's capturing the email. It could do phone number, any number of things based on what you want it to do. And so we can follow up. All right, so with that demo out of the way, next we're going to start walking through how I set all this up. All right, so I'm going to break these steps down a little bit more detailed here. So first we're going to organize the documentation, and I want to show you guys what that looks like in my Notion. Really, this was just a lot of brute force work. You should already have a bunch of documentation about your business. So I've got 4 different document types here. I've got services that I provide. So like this OP check, operating performance check, is one of the services that Gemini provides. Shameless plug. You can see though that I kind of copied it from somewhere else in my documentation and pasted it all in, and it's all marked down. So it's kind of got these tables going on here, maybe not the best, but actually AI works really, really well with markdown format. And that's one of the things we're going to see again and again, is that you really want everything to be in markdown because the AI will do the best job at answering questions from the user and finding the information it's looking for. So I've got services. I've got proposals that I've done before to help the proposal writer agent. Just some general about us information, letter from the founder, core values, etc. So the point is, for your use case, you have to figure out what document types you're going to use because most of this is for Q&A, but the proposals specifically are going to help train the proposal writer. But we'll kind of see how all that flows out. So that's really just organizing your documentation in your system of choice. All right, so now that we've got all of our documents organized in Notion, ready to go, we're going to talk about how to set up the upload trigger in Nathan so that every time one of those documents is modified, we reload it in our database, in our document database. So just before we set up this flow, there's a couple things we need. Number 1, I'm not going to go into all these details, but you're going to have to set up your database in Notion and set up the integration. You might have to create a custom Notion integration app and go through some of those steps. The N8N documents are pretty good if you follow the links. So on this Notion node here, there's always this little docs link in every single one of these nodes that will take you to Nathan docs that tell you how to set up this node, how to do those connections. I'm not going to get into all that because there's a lot of resources that kind of walk you through doing that. Secondly, you're going to have to set up a Pinecone database, because we're going to load all this into Pinecone or some other vector store and then connect to the Pinecone API for your account. Again, I'm not going to go into that. Those are the 2 things you need to get this flow working though. So then as a quick overview, what we're going to do is first we set up the Notion trigger so that when documents are updated, we get notified within Nathan. We're then going to loop through all of that and we're going to check was this document previously loaded into the database? If so, well, we do another document exists over here. And if so, we delete all of the vectors associated with that document. Then we have to do another piece of logic where we basically say, because the way that Notion works is for one page, all of the lines in that page are like separate blocks. They're separate entities within Notion, because any line can be a subpage, it can be a foreign link, all this stuff. So we actually have to kind of go back and map all of that content back to the update trigger that came in the first place. And then finally, we can insert that document into Pinecone. Okay, so just to quickly run through each of these. So with this first page updated Notion node, I've got it connected to my Notion account. I'm checking every minute for changes, and I've just set the event to be page updated in database. And once you have the Notion integration set up, you'll be able to select your database from the list here. Pretty straightforward. Like I said a second ago, so you don't always have to do this loop, but because we've got this branching logic, and eventually we're going to get a bunch of items for a page, we kind of have a list of lists. And because we have a list of updated pages, each page with a list of contents, that's just how the Notion API works. We need to use a loop in order to keep track of which item in the first list maps to all the items in the second list. Hopefully that makes sense. Pretty straightforward though. We just make sure we're using a batch size of 1. No other configuration needed there. Pinecone. Okay, so then we have to check, hey, have I loaded this particular document into Pinecone before? And N8N does not have any native Pinecone nodes for this. So you have to set up a custom HTTP request node, method post. You have the URL here to your Pinecone database. You're going to do a query. You're going to have to make sure that your Pinecone credentials are in here. That part was a little bit tricky. All that's pretty standard. You do have to send a body. And yes, I had to use AI to kind of figure out what this payload needed to look like. The important thing is you're mapping on namespace for the document type. So like we talked about before, when you set up your documents here, each document's going to have a unique name and document type. And in your Pinecone database, they call it an index in Pinecone. And then each of these document types is going to map to a namespace within Pinecone. And the reason you're going to do that is because you're going to put all your service documents in the same namespace so that anytime somebody has a question about your services, you can basically filter on information within a single namespace. It's almost like a table, right? So you can say, hey, go to the services table, search through all that, and try to come up with the answer to this question. So you're going to separate by namespace. And then, of course, we need the unique name because within the service namespace, we want to be able to delete all entries associated with the OP check because we're going to update that data. So that's why here we're actually searching on this namespace. And then we also have the filter on the file name. So we're using those two things to hone in on the data that we want to make sure we clear out to reload. So next is a simple if exists node. So we're just saying, look, if there's anything in the database, then the document does exist. And here's where we have to do a little bit of magic because, again, the Pinecone APIs, they give you back all of the vectors in like a big list. You have to shrink those down into a single IDs field and then make another API to Pinecone to vectors/delete with all of the IDs in one single JSON field. Also putting in the document type. Once you've deleted any old entries, you can now go back to the page that we got the update for and get the content for that page. So this is a Notion node connected to our account. We just say, hey, get all the child blocks for this particular page by ID. Pretty straightforward. But again, we have to merge all this data. So we have to write a custom code Nathan node. That's hard to say. And one of the super cool things about Nathan, though, is that if you don't know how to code, you can click this little Ask AI button here, and you just describe what you want it to do. Now, I kind of was familiar with these APIs and stuff, so I kind of knew that, hey, what I want to do is convert all of these blocks in Notion into a single string, a single piece of text that is formatted in Markdown. Markdown is what you want all of your content in. AI is really good at reading Markdown, understanding Markdown. So you pretty much want all your content in Markdown. Markdown, Markdown, Markdown. So we merge all those blocks together into a single content. And then this is where we have to merge these two workflows because, again, I've got my list of blocks. I need to map those back to the correct, element in that list of updates. I don't think there's anything really here. I'm just saying combine by position the two inputs. And you can see that input 1 comes straight from the loop, and then all the blocks that we just merged after we got the page content. Then comes the Pinecone vector store. So in here, connect it to Pinecone, make sure it inserts the documents. This is my Pinecone index or my Pinecone database, which is just N8N proposal bot. And I just make sure that it's going in on this document type namespace, which again is something like service or proposal or whatever, just trying to keep similar documents all within the same namespace so that my quality of answers can be improved. These other things here are pretty standard. I have not spent a lot of time looking into all this. The important thing is that if you choose a model like text embedding 3 small, make sure it's the same model all throughout your flow. Everywhere else you're interacting with this Pinecone database, it needs to be the same model there. Default data loader. I am attaching some metadata to this. So I've got all my markdown text that I computed from the previous node, and then I am inserting some metadata like unique name, document type, AI keywords. I haven't used these yet. I'm not sure if I will. I just wanted to set that up in case I was going to come back to it later. Recursive character splitter, chunk size 950. I think those are defaults. I've watched a little bit of videos. Those seem like pretty good generic values. There's a whole science to all that, though, that I'm not going to get into. And that's it. So with this flow, every single minute, it's going to be watching that Notion database that we have. And anytime we make a change to any one of these documents, it's going to go through, clear out the old records, upload the new ones. Let's go ahead and just run this and see what happens, see if I got this set up right. So you can hit this test workflow button here. It's going to go grab kind of a random event from Notion. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at that. Woo! Everything green. Awesome. Okay, so if I double click on this, it found an About Gemini document here from the About Us type. And if I go to the loop, it's just like, yep, I'm looping over one thing here. See these little side buttons? Those are kind of fun. It's actually got the markdown text already in here. Oh, you know why? Because that's from the done branch. That's a little confusing. So if I go to the first of 2 iterations, there's nothing in the done branch yet, but the loop branch knows that it has this About Gemini document. We'll go to the Pinecone request to search for entries, and it does find at least one match in here. So there's one match that says, yep, I already have this document in there. The if exists is simply checking that again to say, hey, I got the response. Was there a matches field in my response? Yes, there was. So then I'm going to go to merge the IDs. The IDs, there's only one ID, so it gets merged down into an IDs list of 1. So it's got the ID from the Pinecone database there. And then I call the delete request. Nothing comes back because it was successfully deleted. Then I go look up the content, the new content, the content that's now freshly updated. And you can see, like I mentioned earlier here, there's actually a bunch of entries. There's a bunch. Each line in Notion document has its own little content entry here. So this is just the header, contact info, heading 1. Paragraph, website is Gemini website, etc. So I merge all that into Markdown here. Boop. And then merge that back with the loop to make sure I'm lining up the content with the right update. And then we go insert that into the vector store. So it just says, yep, all this content here was merged in. We got the metadata here, which had the file name, the category, which is also the namespace there. Bada boom, bada bang, bada done. Next we're going to talk about the first AI agent. Okay, so we've got everything loaded. We've got a hook set up to be updating our documents as we're making more changes, as the marketing team is making more changes, whatever. Now we actually want to build our AI agent to interact with that content. First couple prerequisites. You need to, again, obviously be connected to your Pinecone database. You also need to make sure that you have an API key to one of the LLM providers. Okay, I'm using OpenAI. You can use any of them, but you're going to need that in order to have the AI agent leveraging that. So once you have those 2 things, just to give a quick overview here, we've got the AI agent. I'm calling it the overseer agent because this one agent is going to answer some basic questions, but then it's actually going to be able to offload some work to our proposal writer agent down here. So we set up this first agent with some default N8N nodes that give us functionality out of the box. We then are going to give it 3 tools to use. And basically that's 1 for each namespace of documents in our database. And that just allows these tools to be very good at answering questions within each category. So we'll have our services tool, cases, case studies tool, and about tool. And then this last one over here, I call this poor man's logging because as I shared this with some of my friends, it was difficult for me to see what they were asking the chatbot and what responses the chatbot was giving back to them. I can go in Nathan, and you can go into executions here. And you can kind of see some of the past interactions, but as you can see, it's a little bit hard. Somebody said, yes, give me a proposal. What did the agent give back? I sent a full proposal. It's a little bit difficult to go through this. I ended up hooking it up to my Slack. I built a little Slack integration so that there's a specific channel where basically any conversation that's happening goes straight to a Slack channel so I can see it. Okay, so let's walk through this step by step. So Nathan gives you these nice tools out of the box. So I just want to show this real quick. You've got, of course, an AI agent that you can drag and drop in. They have this chat trigger here, which is basically that's what gives you this little open chat down here, and it gives you little chats to play with. Hi. Oh, that didn't work. Only one chat node allowed in a workflow. Oh, okay. I thought I was adding a new chat thing. So this is actually testing out your chatbot here. You get that default view. And then the third tool that I'm going to walk through is the vector store question and answer tool. So this is just a helper where Nathan has already set up what it should look like to receive a prompt from a user and basically say, hey, AI, take this question, try to answer it based on this data in a vector store. So we'll go through that in a little more detail as well. But those are the three that I want you to pay attention to. So if we open up this first when chat message received node, you can see that it gives us this chat URL, which makes it really easy to go play with your chat. I made it public, of course. It is a hosted chat. In this case, you can try to embed it on your website. My website was being difficult for that. Plus, I wanted that custom domain anyways. So it's a hosted chat. I don't care about authentication right now. You can program the initial messages. And then you can do some custom styling here, which, as you can see, I'm no designer, but at least it's got some pink and purple in there. Let's go back to the sales agent. So that's going to just send all the prompts to the AI agent. I've got it connected to my chat trigger node, taking in just the regular chat input, nothing special there. Then you have this big old system prompt. And this, honestly, guys, was like the hardest part of this whole thing, was getting the right system prompt in there to actually get the chatbot to give the responses that I wanted. And what you can do here is make sure it's in expression mode. You can pop open this link here and you get a little bit of an easier editing view here. Make sure it's all marked down, like I've said before. I will give you guys a link to a GPT that I used to help generate these system prompts a little bit later. Maybe we'll make sure that's in the notes down below. I'm not going to get into that right now, though. I'm just going to do this quick walkthrough. You have to connect a chat model and a memory node here. So the chat model, you can use any one that you want. I'm using GPT-4. And the memory here, just really basic stuff. Pay attention to the session ID. We'll come back to that later. But you do need to make sure the session ID is in there the proper way. That should happen by default in this case, but we're going to have to custom do that for the agent that we delegate some work to. So next we're going to talk about the tools. So again, I just use this vector store question and answer tool. You just drag and drop that over here. And for each of these, you make sure it's got the right name here. Services tool, you describe the data, and then limit, I just put 4. I don't even know. I think this is like how many records it's going to try to look up and process. But the rest of this is pretty standard as far as what we did before. So you're going to connect it to your pinecone. You're going to make sure it's pointing to the right pinecone index that we used before. And then you make sure it's got the right namespace. This is probably the most important part. This is why we have 3 separate tools, because you want to make sure that each tool is only using data from one namespace so that it's all kind of similar data and it can give more pointed answers. And then, like I mentioned before, also, you want to make sure this model is the same. I'm using text embedding 3 small. I just make sure that's everywhere. Anytime it asks for that, I put that in. And I'm using OpenAI 4.0 in that case. So these all look pretty much the same. I have the top level cases tool, which just describes the data. I point it to the right namespace in the vector store, and then I just fill out the rest of it. It needs a model, it needs an embedding. You make sure those are the same, you move on. Same thing here. The about documents describe the Gemini company. They indicate our core values, our story, and how to contact us. And then I make sure that it's pointing to the about namespace there. Okay, pretty simple there. The one thing I'll say about this poor man's logging, you don't have to do this, of course. I came in here and I'm just sending it to the user Dan, a simple text message, kind of putting in here's what the user prompted and here's what was responded to. If you do this, you have to make sure to have another node after it, and that node needs to make sure to only return one single key of output with a text value here. If you do not do this, what ends up happening is every time somebody sends a prompt message, it comes to the AI agent, the N8N workflow passes off the response from the agent to the next node in the flow, and whatever the result is of that next node, that's what gets returned to the user in that chat prompt. So in the case of Slack, we're doing some kind of post request on the back end. It gets back some big old response object, and I was getting that response object back in the chat to the user-facing chat. So you just have to make sure to put this little edit thing here so that the result of this edit node is the simple output, and then that should clean up the response going back to the user. Okay, and finally, AI agent proposal writer. This is not an AI agent node. This is a call N8N workflow tool. So you want to grab this node, bring it over, and you're going to say, call this tool to handle every request regarding service quotes or proposals. And then the source is going to be from your local N8N database, from list, and you're going to point it at a separate workflow. So you're going to have to go create that workflow first, come back here, make sure it's pointing to it, and then here's the two important bits. The workflow inputs you want to make sure is the session ID and the chat input. And you want to name it just like this. Try to keep everything just the same, because this is going to make sure that as you're delegating work down to that agent, like the context, the memory, right? The last 10 chat messages or whatever, you're going to make sure that all of that persists even as you're delegating work. So other agents know what's going on. They know the context of the conversation and give higher quality answers, of course. So that is our first Gemini sales agent, kind of what I call the AI agent overseer, who's kind of generally answering questions, able to delegate work to a sub agent, which we will get into shortly. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the AI agent proposal writer. So our overseer agent is going to make a call to this agent, and this agent is going to have a specialized prompt to deal with how to write proposals. And as you can see, it's also using similar tools to search our vector database and to pull back information in order to write those proposals. But also we have a couple other tools here. We've got two tools that can send a lead to the CRM and chat. So that's going to push it into our Notion database and Slack so that we just get notified right away of new leads that come in. And then, of course, we need a Gmail tool in order to email out the full proposal. And a quick note on prerequisites to this. Obviously, we still need to be connected to our Pinecone vector database. We need to be hooked up with an LLM provider like OpenAI that I'm using. But then also here, if I'm connecting to Notion, well, I need that Notion integration set up. And again, you can click on this. You can go to Docs. And there's pretty good documents in N8N and in Notion as to how to set up that integration stuff. I won't get into it. Same with Slack, same with Gmail. So it depends on where you want this information to go, but this is an example of how you can set these tools up to send out notifications and take actions. Whoops, zoomed in. Okay, so to go through step by step here, we're going to have a node here that is when executed by another workflow. And we're going to want to make sure that we grab that session ID and grab that chat input that the other flow is going to give us. You're going to have to set this part up first, I believe. And then you can go back to the other workflow and it will refresh and you'll be able to map the session ID and chat input to the proper inputs here. So once you get that, that's going to connect to your AI agent. It's going to have basically the same setup as we had before. You're going to have your OpenAI chat model connected. You're going to have that simple memory node. I guess I'll just flash this real quick. So GPT-4o for the model. Memory using the session ID for this has a context window of 5 in this case. And then we will talk about these tools because we've already done this before. Now, the one difference you'll notice is that in the sales agent, it's got the About tool, because it's going to tell you information about our company. In this one, we don't really care about the about information so much, but I do care that I can access past proposals because I want to use those to say, hey, if somebody's asking for a project that is similar to a project that we've proposed before or done before, like use cases and proposals, those are the kind of the two training data that's going to say, hey, see how similar it is, and then basically use those as a template to draft a new proposal for this user. And then of course we just allow it to have the services tool in case it wants to know information about how much does that build blueprint cost, etc. So I'll just flash these again real quick. We're describing the data. We are making sure it's mapping to the right Pinecone namespace. Don't forget that within our Pinecone database or our Pinecone index. And then all the same stuff here. Use that text 3 small embedding and your GPT-4o or whatever model you want to use. You can tweak all that stuff to your heart's content. And I am tempted to not even go through the rest of this, but I will real quick. Make sure the namespace is correct. Make sure the namespace is correct for services. All right, good to go. For this AI agent, one thing I want to call out, there's a big old system prompt here. I will go through this in just a minute. Bear with me. Okay, so for these other tools, right, for the Notion CRM here, we've got the tool description set automatically. The tool description just helps the AI agent know which of these tools to call based on the context, right? So I just set this one to do automatically. It is connected with my Notion account. I've told it to go to a database page, be able to create new entries on that page. I've linked it to the proper one here, customer relationship management. And for a lot of this stuff here, so it's going to pull in the columns from that database, and I can just say define automatically by the model. I don't even have to give it an explicit mapping, which is pretty cool. So it knows how to populate contact info, customer name, notes. There's other columns in that database you guys saw earlier, like phone number, some of that other stuff. We could continue to get more accurate and fill out that information. I'm not too concerned about it for this demo. Now for the Slack tool, again, I created a custom Slack N8N integration app. So it's going to be connected with that N8N bot app that I created. It's going to be able to send messages here, and I just configured it to send it to a user, which is myself, the simple text message, and I let the model define it. I don't really care what it says. I just want to know, hey, a new lead came in. I just wanted to send that to me in Slack, so that in case I'm away from my email or whatever, I can go look it up, take immediate action. And then finally, we've got this Gmail tool. It's connected to my Gmail account. Again, if you have questions, go check the docs. It's pretty straightforward, especially if you're using N8N in your browser and in the cloud, and you're not trying to do something custom. Tool description you set automatically. It's sending a message, operation send, resource message. And then again, the to in the subject, I'm just letting the model define it. I would say, make sure the email type is text because the formatting can get kind of weird otherwise. So I would definitely recommend text, and then you can configure, some other things here. You can turn off the N8N attribution, you can add the sender name, etc. And that's it. Pretty straightforward on this AI agent proposal writer. As far as the setup goes, the prompting with the system message was another beast entirely. Okay, so we've organized the documents. We've got all them getting loaded into our Pinecone database whenever there are changes. We've built our overseer agent and even our proposal agent. Before we get to deploying it as a website, like I did, I want to make a quick note on prompting properly, which is a really difficult thing, at least for me. And so if we go in here real quick, so this is our overseer agent. And I can go to the system message here. I can pop open this expression. I found this kind of a pain to work with, trying to make edits and everything, especially with just the way that N8N works and you have to keep going back and everything. So I ended up pulling this out to just a separate Notion page because I wanted to save this off. I wanted to have this available for if I eventually move off of N. So I have this AI agent definitions page, and I just have the overseer, everything written in here just as like a code block so I can just know exactly what my markdown is going to look like. Same with the proposal agent. It's all in here. So, and a couple of tests at the end, right? Just trying to get a good workflow going here. What I will say is this system prompt generator worked super well. If you go to ChatGPT and look for a system prompt generator, you can just type in anything here. I'm creating a sales agent that should be able to give proposals. And I went through a couple different versions of this, and I found that what this prompt gives me as a baseline was a really good baseline. We're not going to sit here and watch everything. I'm just going to go back and kind of walk you guys through a couple of the key points. So number one, have a role. Make sure that's very clear and expressed. Don't make it complicated. Don't have the role be three things. If you have the role too broad and too big, then you actually need 3 different AI agents to do that best. Available tools is really helpful so that it knows which tool to call and why. So you have our about tool, our service tool, cases tool, proposal agent is a tool. It needs to know when should I call out to the proposal agent. Chain of thought was pretty useful. I won't get into that. You guys can read through that. And what not to do, both really good as well, because it says do not guess information outside of your tool scopes. So it makes sure that it's not going to go start pulling from the industry and be like, oh, well, here's developer rates from Glassdoor or whatever, which is, it's a good baseline, but it's like your bot's not anything special if it's acting like that. You want it specialized to your processes, your services, your rates, etc. So the proposal agent, very similar here. We've got the role well-defined. We've got the available tools, chain of thought. One thing I wanted to call out is I have a separate section. So under instructions, for each user, you will ask questions to understand the features, find similar projects and matching skills. And if I go down to this proposal and summary proposal instructions, I've actually got kind of my own little custom algorithm here. I'm saying, hey, calculate a similarity score, 1, 2, 3, low, medium, high. And based on that similarity score, we've got our kind of baseline rate of 140 an hour. And if it's a high match, we can do this 30% faster, which is 30% less cost. If it's something we've done before, right? I mean, this is just like common sense, right? If you've done the same project 10 times, you're way more efficient at it. So why shouldn't we be as a company? And same with the lower scores, like, hey, it might be 50% slower if it's something we've never done before. And that's just upfront, honest pricing. And if you really want us to work that project, okay, we'll work that project, but it might take us a little bit longer. So I've got some custom instructions in here. I have to get really specific sometimes, keep it to 100 words max, because this is kind of part of a lead gen strategy where I want to give them a little bit. I want to answer their question, but I want to say, hey, you have to give me your name and email for me to answer all your questions, give you this full proposal so that I can track that lead. So just a lot of details in here, I think I spent probably just as much time figuring these prompts out as I did actually building the N8N workflow. That's probably an exaggeration, but that's what it felt like. Lord knows. So I got it all in here, and it made it a lot easier for me personally to work with. And then I would just go back to my workflows here and copy paste that in to the system message here. Just made it a little bit easier. All right, so one final little bonus segment here, deploying to the website. Now, N8N makes this pretty easy out of the box. If you go to your agent overseer, which is your top level agent, you click on this chat node. They give you the chat URL, and the mode here, you can switch back and forth from either hosted or embedded. And if it's embedded, they just give you that snippet, right? Where's the snippet at? Follow the instructions here to embed the chat in your web page, etc. They make it really easy to do this. Here it is. This is the snippet I was looking for. You can grab this snippet. You can drop it in. It should work. Did it work on my website? No. Why? Because Dan's cheap, and I got a $2 website. And when I tried to do it, it didn't work. The chat bubble was like way down here, and it was cropped weirdly, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not even gonna mess with that. So instead of messing with that, I did this the hard way, where I set up a little custom domain for it, chat.jemini.io. So how I did that is, if we come back here, we leave it as a hosted chat. This URL works just fine. You can share this out with your friends, but this doesn't look professional. If a client or a prospect actually comes to your site, they're going to look at that and be like, it looks kind of spammy or something. I don't know. So all I did was created a repository. You guys feel free to fork this. I'll put this in the notes down below. Just a little Gemini chat proxy. It's a single Docker file with a single Nginx conf. The Docker file, nothing special there. The Nginx configuration file, I just paste in that N8N URL as the proxy pass. Once I set that up, and of course there's a couple other little details here, but ChatGPT will give this to you easily. You get that set up, you come over to render, you create a new web service, you point it at the repository. It almost works out of the box. The only other thing that you have to do after you create this web service from this repository is custom domains, which is down here somewhere. Custom domains. So you come in here, you add a new custom domain. It gives you the DNS configuration instructions. So I went back to my website, entered that, what is it, like the CNAME or whatever it is, right? So I can say chat2 jemini.io, add the CNAME record for chat2. You do that. It all works pretty quickly. So as soon as I did that, I get my custom URL here. I have a little bit more control, and I found that to be a bit more straightforward. Hey, can we get some like old Western gunshot noises here. You know, like that. All right. Time for some good, bad, and ugly of doing this project. So first of all, I just love the visual layout of N8N. I love how you can see the nodes going from node to node, the workflows here. The development experience is really great. Being able to push through test data and verify each node as you're building it just made it really helpful. Another great thing, the default chat out of the box, pretty solid. I mean, it works. I didn't have to really configure it. I chose to configure it, but that was really good. Also, the documentation. Like, look at this. If I go in this AI agent node here, click the documents, it's got all the documentation in here, and they even have a bunch of templates and examples. Now, this is a little bit maybe on the ugly side of things because N8N and a lot of these agent technologies, they're changing all the time. And so even though there is a ton of templates out there, some of them are outdated and some of them are like, you know, just because you can doesn't mean you should kind of thing. So you do have to watch out for that. You have to be careful about what you copy paste, especially in emerging markets like this one. But overall, glowing review. I love N8N, and I'm finding more and more use cases for it. Now for the bad. Okay, so if I was doing this for a client, if you want a chatbot and you said, Dan, build me something like that, I would say, cool, but I'm not going to do it with their chat widget. It works. It's gets it up and running for a good demo, but it doesn't have the streaming feedback like you expect from a chat GPT. The customizations are kind of limited. You guys saw earlier in the video that this chat box doesn't really respond the way that I would want it to respond with large input. So that one piece I would build separately. But one of the cool things about N is you can still use a lot of these workflows as your backend. You know, for instance, this proposal writer, none of this is public facing. It works as is out of the box. And so I could use this as my own. I could build a custom front end and then just use this as the back end. The one limitation there to watch out for is, again, it doesn't do any streaming responses that I can figure out. So until they have that, I would still probably even do some of this AI agent with custom code just to give that first class production experience. One more thing in the bad category is, well, okay, good and bad. What's good? The ability to look at these executions. I know you guys can't quite see this because of the filter over there, but you can go back through and look at all your old workflow or all your old executions, see what the input was, see what the output was. I really love that. The problem is with something like an AI agent, this is happening all the time. And every single chat that comes into your system, even in the same conversation as the user is chatting, those are all separate executions. So like logging, observability, knowing what your AI agent is saying, none of that is really clear. There's no like one-stop shop to just see all the responses. So I feel like that's something that I'm going to put that in the bad category because you guys, we got to be careful with AI. Okay. There are too many ways it can go wrong. There's too many things that we still just don't know yet. So pay attention to what you're building, how you're building it, and what it's doing for you. Even though I just built this whole thing, I'm still kind of leery and reserved about how much power, how much automation are we really going to allow these AI agents to do when it's not Dan doing it? It's not me actually writing that proposal, sending that email. So we just got to pay attention. We got to be careful. Again, in a production system, I would figure out how to do that part differently. Okay, and then there's maybe one or two things in the ugly category. So when I did this workflow to upload the updated docs to the vector database, it was cool, but I mean, if you look at this flow, it's like the only really automated thing in here is the page updated event from Notion. And then it's like custom HTTP request, custom code, another custom HTTP request, and kind of an API call to Notion, but more custom code. And then we load it in the vector database. So at this point, it's like, as a developer, I should have just written this probably as its own deployable script, you know, through this on render with the webhook call from Notion coming in and just doing this all myself. At this point, I'm not really sure that it makes sense to do something like this in N8N. I mean, yeah, maybe a non-coder can do this, but again, that's only going to work for like proof of concepts and prototypes. If you're trying to do this as a production system you can rely on, probably wouldn't do that. And then the last thing that was just kind of ugly was the system prompting, like I said, and that's not really Nathan's fault here. The system prompting is just difficult in general. I think what I would like to see more of is kind of like that assistant I showed you guys, where there's resources out there that walk you through, here's how you should prompt, and especially the testing flow. Like we need to have a really good testing flow for if this is the system prompt and I ask this question, what is the output? There might be tools out there. If you guys know of any, maybe post a comment and let me know, because I find that if there was like a really good fast feedback iteration that I can do on my prompts that way and understand what those responses are going to be, that would be a game changer. And I think that tools like N8N, knowing how common of a use case AI agents like this are going to be, really should be thinking about building in that kind of a test tool. All in all, loved it. I hope you guys found it useful, and I'll see you in the next video.